When we first started doing workshops, it was exciting. We're using our rap in a different way and we're making a good amount of money doing it. You're doing a workshop, you do it for half a day, and this is how much you're getting paid, and it was more money than either of us had seen in a long ever.
Yeah.
But then when we were doing sometimes a few a day, we could do it in our sleep.
Yeah.
It was no longer challenging or particularly exciting. What was exciting for me was seeing it grow from a business perspective. That's the kind of stuff that excites me, developing and growing that kind of thing.
Hello and welcome to So This Works, the podcast about work-life balance. My name is Marcus Lee and I'm your host. I'm also a filmmaker. I run Real Street Productions, a video production company based in West Yorkshire. Before I set up Real Street, I worked with my good friend and guest on today's episode, Philip Charles, one of the directors of PiPeLine Productions Academies Ltd, an alternative education organisation based in Bradford. On this episode, we talk about how we collaborated together on music workshops, how the PiPeLine Productions Academy got started, how a hobby can become something you start getting paid for, and the art of salsa dancing, amongst other things. I hope you enjoy this episode. When the beat kicks in, make sure you nod your head and stay tuned. Philip Charles.
Afternoon.
It's nice to see you.
You too.
Thanks for being on the podcast, That Last Man. It's great to have you. There's no secrets here. We are good friends. We know each other away from this podcasting world and the world of business. But for people who don't know you, could you introduce yourself properly and tell us what you do?
My name is Philip Charles, and I am one of the directors of a company called PiPeLine Productions Academies Ltd. That's pretty much the main thing that I do at the minute, and that is, we run alternative provisions, so it's I suppose you'd describe them as schools, although they're not. The places where young people are educated, young people who have difficulties in mainstream schools. So at the minute I've got two of those. We've got one in the centre of Bradford and one in Keighley, which focus on different subjects.
So how did the idea come about?
It came about through a couple things, and obviously, as you know, you're involved in this story. So when I came back from uni, a few things happened. So I'd done 2 music degrees, and you know, that's all great, got really good grades and all that kind of business. And then you come into the real world, and what do I do with 2 music degrees? Because there's not loads of jobs out there.
Yeah.
And that's when we sort of reconnected in 2000, and I think it was back into 2002, wasn't it, when we reconnected?
Yeah.
No, it was 2003.
2003.
It was one of those things.
Yeah.
And
which is 16 years ago.
It's
scary to think it's that long ago.
I mean, there's people that I work with every day who weren't even alive then. They weren't even a thought.
Yeah.
So, yeah, whatever year it was, we connected around November of that year with a view to collaborating musically.
Yeah.
And you'd already been doing workshops in schools, rap workshops, teaching young people how to rap and MC. And this project was coming up where someone had asked you, the funders had asked you if you knew another MC who could maybe get involved, and you spoke to me, and that's how that kind of began.
Yeah. And
PiPeLine doing that sort of educational thing began. So we were doing workshops, but obviously at that point we had 2 that year, one in 1 month, one the following month. But I was also broke, and that wasn't paying the bills. So I also took up supply teaching. So I was supply teaching in schools, which really gave me a good education footing and real understanding of teaching young people. I'm talking like, you know, secondary school age pupils, because I already had experience of teaching. I'd done it at university, and I'd done it even before I went to university, but that was normally people who wanted to learn, you know, that was older people.
Yeah.
So I did the supply teaching for a couple of years until it made me ill. I took a little bit of a break from work while I was trying to get a recording contract, and then needed to find a job when that didn't come through. So I started working for the local education authority. At that time, that was a company called Education Bradford, which was under Serco, who also do prisons and speed cameras and all that kind of stuff.
You think there's a link?
Oh, obviously. Yeah, absolutely. And the more I'm in education, I see that link increasingly.
Yeah.
So I worked for them as what was called a personal advisor, and my role in that was I was based in like 5 schools, and I had to work with young people who had really complex multiple needs, and they were disengaging from education. And my role was to try and re-engage them into society, re-engage them into education. And the sort of governmental reason for this was to try and prevent these young people from becoming what was called NEET, N-E-E-T, not in education, employment or training. So it's a view of saving the taxpayer money in the long run, which is a great idea, but you know, the actual implementation and execution of these things is just always faulty. So that was my role, and part of that, I had to use alternative education. So I became really aware of the alternative education providers in the city. That was part of my job. I had to know all of them. I had to have contacts in them and know what they charged, know what the pros and cons were. So on the one hand, I had the teaching experience. You and I were doing increasing amounts of workshops. It was really it actually became a full-time job for both of us at a certain point. Yeah. And I had all this knowledge of the alternative education sector. And there was nothing out there that did the sort of music, the hip-hop stuff, and fuse that with alternative education. And that's where I saw that niche. I saw that avenue there.
Fantastic. Just rewinding, just because I mean we'll keep talking about the alternative provision, but going back to when we first met, and this is going to relate ages. So I keep saying on the podcast, I'm 38 years old. I met you 20 years ago. I want to say it was 19 something. I want to say it was 1999, because I can remember going to a studio in Little Germany with a mutual friend, and we met there, and you had a lot more hair then. So would I. Do you remember that time?
Yeah. I remember well. I mean, where we are at the minute, it was just across the road from where we are. Yeah. So VSI Studios, Visual Sounds Interactive, and that was a very exciting time. And that was it was around the time when music was fairly new to me, and you know, I was just getting into all that kind of stuff. And I think I'd always, you know, when I came back from university or from music college in Newcastle upon Tyne, I'd visit my parents, I'd visit my girlfriend's parents, and then I'd go to the studio, and that was my life. And yeah, of course, I met you, and you were with a guy called Rob. Yeah. And Rob made beats, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
and he made exceedingly good beats.
He did make very good beats. Yeah,
he made good beats. We didn't really talk that much though. I do remember, because I remember talking to my contact in VSI was Johnny Lone, Mohammed Lone, who I think is now a teacher. Okay, he's been a teacher for years. He just disappeared from the music scene. Yeah. And yeah, I talked to him about, I wonder whether or not me and Marcus could actually do something. So that was going on behind the scenes. You weren't aware of that because it never came.
So you thought about me even though I wasn't present?
Yeah, Marcus. And I've thought about you ever since.
Must have had a great influence. So you went off to university, you came back, you did the workshops, and doing those workshops was fun. It was fun. They were sometimes challenging. Yeah. You know, doing rap music workshops, hip hop workshops, going into schools, not just in Bradford, but up and down the country as well, which was great. So driving to a lot of random places, hearing different accents, hanging out with different people. Have you got any highlights of those times, any happy memories or things that stand out of those workshops?
Some of the things that stand out, I mean, there's been lots of things that stand out. But I think within my current sort of thinking, excuse me, this is going to sound materialistic, but eventually when we first started doing workshops, it was exciting. We're using our rap in a different way and we're making a good amount of money doing it. So we had certain, you know, you're doing a workshop, you do it for half a day, and this is how much you're getting paid, and it was more money than either of us had seen in a long ever. Yeah. And as we started to develop that and grow that as a business, and I packed in my full-time job, and eventually you followed and did the same, the challenge didn't become the workshops. Because remember when we first started doing workshops, we wrote like a 5-page, 6-page lesson plan of the workshops. Yeah. Then eventually we were actually doing, and we did that for everyone. Yeah. But then when we were doing sometimes a few a day, We could do it in our sleep.
Yeah.
It was no longer challenging or particularly exciting. What was exciting for me was seeing it grow from a business perspective and being able to push the fee that we got per day.
Yeah.
That sounds materialistic, but what I've come to realize as someone who now is growing a business, that's the kind of stuff that excites me, developing and growing that kind of thing. And so the highlight was when we got the Manchester police contract.
Yeah.
Because it was, I just got a speeding fine. So I was upset with the police and we had this meeting with the police. Don't get me wrong. I was speeding.
Yeah.
I hold my hand up, you know what I mean? So it's not the police's fault. They were doing what they needed to do. But, you know, younger me, I was annoyed. So we had this meeting with the police and it was in Manchester. I didn't want to go to Manchester. I don't think you wanted to go to Manchester. So we did that thing where we overquoted them. And we quoted them, I think it was more than 3 times what we would normally get paid for a day. Yeah. And they didn't even blink. Yeah, that's fine. And we had loads of those workshops. Yeah. And that was a good time.
I love those moments where people don't even blink, but you also think, I could have gone higher.
Exactly.
I could have charged a little bit more.
Yeah.
What was the moment for you then, obviously doing the workshops, working freelance, that you thought, actually, you've done that for a while, it's been great, it's enjoyable, but what was the moment when you thought, actually, I don't want to do the freelance thing anymore, I want to move into having a limited company?
It wasn't so much a moment, and it wasn't so much a choice. Things became trickier, didn't they, when the global economy crashed? Yeah. And for a long time, it didn't actually impact what we were doing. We didn't feel that effect, but then the contract started to stop. This contract that we'd been doing for 2 years, that stopped. Okay, that's one. We're fine. And then another, and then another. Yeah. Because remember, we did so much work with Bradford Youth Service. Remember, we found that booklet and we went through it and our name wasn't mentioned once, but there was something like 16 projects, and of the 16 projects, we'd done 15. Yeah. That's how prolific we were at that time. But then, of course, with the cuts to the Bradford Youth Service, that was a big employer for us. Yeah. So I was still doing workshops even after I'd started the limited company and I was forming the PiPeLine Productions Academy. And I think had the bottom not dropped out of the economy, I'd probably still be doing them. Okay. Well, no, let me rewind that. Let me take that back. I probably would have continued doing them for a while. So I did continue doing them for a while. I think the thing that fundamentally stopped was I felt old. Okay. That's what stopped me. Yeah. I fully take on board when I speak to other MCs, age doesn't matter, look at Dr. Dre, he's in his 50s and he's still rapping. But I felt like an imposter.
I can remember a point, I would have been 30 something, but often you'd go to speak to young people and you'd ask them, who's your favourite MC? Who's your favourite producer? And they'd say a name and you know the name, Tupac, Biggie, Jay-Z, 50 Cent, it'd be quite popular names. And then there was a point when they started saying names and I think,
I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is.
And then they play some and you go, that's awful. Yeah. And you just can't relate to them anymore. Yeah. And the style of freestyle that we used to do and the style of hip hop we were into was the classic, I want to say American style, but the classic hip hop style. Yeah. Slower BPMs and that kind of thing. And there was a shift towards the grime sort of style. Yeah. Where even though we were capable of doing that style, our lyrical content could never be something that the young people relate to, because if you weren't talking about Shanks and robbing banks lyrics, then they just weren't relating to you. Yeah. So when you talked about conscious stuff, they just laughed. Yeah. And even though whenever we freestyled, they couldn't deny that. Do you know what I mean? Even though it wasn't their style, they couldn't deny the skills that were involved. It was something they couldn't do, and it was something that even the people they admired couldn't do. Yeah. We were just not becoming relatable. Yeah. And that made me feel old. And it was time to just give it up. And strangely enough, after I give it up, that's when some of the jobs started kind of flooding in. Yeah. So, that was it.
Do you think other people in business sometimes fail to see that sometimes it's time that you need to stop working in that certain business, you need to stop flogging that horse and close that door and move on to something else?
Yeah. There are lots of people And I see, even on the way over here, I was talking to you about a potential business that, I'm looking at buying, and, receiving the books for this company, the accounts, and just thinking, dude, why didn't you just look at that and go, no, this ain't working?
Yeah.
Instead of flogging that dead horse for years and years, or at least change direction or something like that. Now, yeah, there's lots of people who flog that dead horse and they keep on going, but I don't think any of us are immune to that. Like I say, the reason why I stopped the workshops was eventually because I felt I'd got too old for it. But the thing that mainly stopped it before was the work wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I think if the work was still there, I'd have been able to cross that age bridge. You know what I mean? I'd have been like with a walking stick still doing it as long as I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
So, it's also recognizing in yourself the changes, my priorities and my ways of being and my ways of carrying myself has shifted over the years, and you've got to shift with it.
Yeah, true that. Slightly away from the world of work then, talking about shifts. We've known each other a long time, but there was a big shift when you took up salsa. Away from the world of work, you've got this new hobby and you started doing salsa. Salsa to me is either a dip or it's this Latin American music and a style of music which I don't really care or know anything about. But you got into salsa. How did you get into salsa? How did you discover that?
We'll come to all that in a second. I mean, all that like you said about dips and so on. But before I go too deep into it, it's fair to say I have this horrible habit of finding something, doing something as a hobby, really enjoying it, and then turning it into something I make money out of, and then not enjoying it so much anymore. Right. And that happened with salsa. So I started salsa. I went to my first salsa night on my 30th birthday. On the day of my 30th birthday, there was also an earthquake in Bradford. Right. I didn't feel it, but it was in the news the next day. I was just at home. It was a Tuesday night, and I didn't have anything planned. And I went, because I had a big party planned for the weekend. And I just thought, well, it's actually my birthday. I should do something. So I just called some friends, and the only place to go on a Tuesday night was a salsa night, first time I'd went. So I went to this salsa night and thought, yeah, this is cool. And then a few months later, I decided to actually go and give it a go and went to my first class. So that was 2008.
Okay.
So 11 years ago.
11 years ago.
And when I went to my first proper class that I went to, I was actually sat outside what used to be the Love Apple, which is now, well, it's still there as a building, but it's not the place that it was. It was a cafe. It was great. So I was sat outside there, nice warm evening, and there was a sign outside that said salsa classes tonight. Looked at my watch. It was in about 20 minutes. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to give it a go. And from that point, I was hooked. So it started off, I did a salsa class maybe once a week for the first 3 weeks, and then twice, and then eventually it became I was doing salsa 6 times a week and private lessons and so on and so forth. Yeah. And then within a few years, somebody approached me to join them in teaching a class in York, and so I first started teaching a class in York. So that's where it started to turn into work. Yeah. And so from then I did teaching, performance, and DJing, and I was also in a salsa band for a while. So I've made money from all those different angles.
That's pretty full on from it just being a hobby or something that you discover on a Tuesday night. Yeah, that's mad. Yeah. And obviously you started then preaching, because when you love something, you start telling everyone about it. If I have a favourite album, I tell everyone, you should listen to this, and they don't care. But salsa was something that you were like, right, guys, you've got to come and do this salsa thing. Check it out.
But I wasn't like that with everybody, Marcus. I was only like that with people that I thought would actually be good at it and would actually enjoy it.
It seemed like you were like that with everyone, but fair enough.
Oh, no, I talk to people about it because you never know. You know what I mean? Like people say things like, oh, yeah, I don't do anything on an evening. Well, you should come to salsa. You probably enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? Because I loved it. And of course, when you're in something like that as well, that's your only that's only where I went. Yeah. If I went to like normal bars and clubs, I was bored out of my head. Yeah. I wanted to be at a salsa night. It was great fun. And, I wanted other people to experience that, but also because that's all you do. That's also where you meet people. Yeah. And that's not why I did salsa, but that's a side effect of what happens. And, my last few girlfriends had been salsa girlfriends, and so it was clear that obviously it's a good place to meet people, and of course it is.
Yeah.
So any single friends who I'd spoke to, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, I don't do anything. Come and try salsa."
Yeah, I can remember your stag do, because I know you did various things for your stag do's, plural. But
I only had two, man. It's not that many.
Well, two is more than one. But I remember going to a night in Leeds. We went to do salsa somewhere, and you were dancing away, and there were a bunch of guys on the side, me included, just watching and not really having a huge interest in it. I do remember, because I was single at the time, I can remember this Spanish-looking lady coming across to me saying, "Do you want to dance?" And it was the first time I thought, I'm genuinely gutted, I can't do this now. I thought, part of me needs to learn just so I can dance with her. But
I'd been trying to get you to come to salsa as far back as 2008.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Christmas do 2008, you actually said, "Okay, let's go."
Yeah.
After we'd been at a Christmas do,
Yeah.
and we went over to salsa, and you said the immortal line of, "Philip, do you know to do salsa, do you have to like salsa music?" And I said, "Well, yeah, kind of."
Yeah,
and you went, "Oh, I hate it. It just makes me really angry."
But as well, I think at that time I just broken up from the person I was with at the time. So yeah, it's a good place to go and meet other people, but I think I was just in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when you associate something with a bad mood, you're just not interested. So years followed, and you were doing salsa and you were becoming amazing at it. And I think I just watched from a distance thinking, well, I've got my hobbies and my interests, so I'm not going to go there. But fast forward, I do have to thank you, and I have thanked you in my wedding speech, because I met my wife went to that salsa,
indeed.
which I'd never expected that to happen. But I met my wife Pam, and you met your wife as well.
I did, yeah, 2009.
How did you meet?
It was at that same Tuesday place, the place where I'd first gone to salsa, although in 2008. So 2009, she was just somebody who'd been in my class. I enjoyed dancing with her, but I hadn't particularly noticed her. I think mainly because I was with somebody else at the time as well. So but then I found myself single. She was single, and it turns out that my nephew was seeing her sister. And so, yeah, it's very weird. And then, she'd seen me on a photograph of his and said, "Oh, wait a second, I know that guy, he does my salsa class." And that's kind of how it just began. And then I started getting messages from my nephew saying, "My girlfriend's harassing me. Do you like this girl?" And
yeah, it's like school playground, isn't it?
It was full school playground stuff,
Yeah.
And I thought it was so immature that we got married a few years later.
Might as well. Yeah. So when you talk about, you going headstrong into something, becoming really full on, at what point did you start thinking, well, I do enjoy it, it's a great hobby, but it's kind of becoming a bit of a chore now when you're working in that as well?
So when I was teaching, when I've been teaching, it's always come to a point where I become bored of it.
Yeah.
When I'm doing the same thing. And what I've started to say when it came to doing salsa teaching, I'll do this for as long as I feel as if I'm making a difference or making a positive impact. That's some of the things that interest me, that and business development. What I've come to sort of realize, like I was saying, I'll start something and get it going and make it successful. But once it's going, I'm no longer sparked. I'm no longer interested. I need it to continue growing. I need to be developing. I need to be moving. And when it comes to doing salsa, I'd reached the limits of where my abilities were taking me, and I'd reached the limits of where I could take it business wise, or where I was inclined to take it business wise.
Yeah,
because it's a very competitive sort of area, and I'm not shy of the competitiveness. But when you couple that with some of the politics that go along, I just got tired of it.
I hate politics.
I wasn't. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I got involved in the politics, not that I wanted to, but sometimes you end up getting dragged in. And, I could be as bad as anybody else.
When you say politics, is that the politics of whose classes people are going to, or what night is most popular, or is someone else putting on an event at the same night as me?
Yeah, all
that kind of stuff.
I mean, I never cared about people going to other people's classes and not mine. That was never the politics that bothered me. But it was just, I don't even know. I don't even know. It's just when you hear some of the things that people have done, or people who've been dancing for 3 months are now teaching the class, and they can't dance in time. And, you know, for a long time in Leeds, for instance, the reason why I got back into teaching in Leeds in the first place was because Leeds had been taken over by poor quality teaching at that time, and it had had such a detrimental impact on the Leeds dancing scene that actually it wasn't that I chose to come back. Somebody begged me to come back because I was the only person around who could actually teach of some quality at that time, because all the other quality teachers had left to do other things. So I was the only one around. I was the only one left, and I could see what they were talking about. You know, you'd go out to nights and you'd come back with blood. You know, people would stomp on you because it can be quite dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. And there was a lot of, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. So you'd see the teaching and you'd go, you're teaching people this stuff, and they can't even keep time, and you're teaching them to dip women's heads down to the floor. Yeah. So the scene needed to change, and I'm proud to say that I was part of that teaching change. There are quite a few other teachers now on the Leeds scene who are teaching really high quality and delivering really high quality nights. Yeah, that I'm superfluous to requirements, and you know, and I'm glad because it means I can focus on my business. Really,
do you think it's one of those situations where people see, well, there's money to be made in salsa, so I'll just start a class?
Or at least they perceive there's money to be made in salsa. There's that. They think there's money to be made in salsa. And there is. Sometimes. I did really good money with the Tuesday nights in Leeds. But there's also a kudos thing. You know, it's about how you're perceived. Yeah. People want to be able to walk into a room and for women to go, oh, that's that teacher. I just danced with the teacher, without realising actually people who know what they're looking at know that teacher's not particularly quality, but you know, it's that kudos thing. And I know certainly some teachers, I don't think it's the case now, but in the past I know certainly some of them were doing it because they said it. They were doing it so they could get women. And they said it, and there was a big sort of scandal in the salsa scene. I think it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, which ended up in a very popular salsa company splitting into 2 different companies, because it turned out one of them was just on a mission, was just had disgusting thoughts about women, and had expressed that, and it got back to various people's girlfriends and so on and so forth, and it just fractured their company. He left Leeds.
Well, rightfully so. I think I remember going as a beginner, and like anyone who is a complete beginner, you see everyone else dancing and everyone looks brilliant and amazing. It's like not speaking Spanish and then hearing people speak Spanish and you're thinking, I don't understand a word that's being said here. Then you learn the language and then you think, that's what he means. Oh yeah, mi corazón, my heart. You know, you start to understand. And as a beginner, watching these people who looked amazing and mind-blowing, you know, I kept continuously going, you know, doing the beginner classes, doing the improver classes, doing the intermediate classes. And then you watch other dancers around you and you think, I used to think you were brilliant and amazing. And I was intimidated to dance with you at one point. And now actually I've realized that now that I know the timing, that your timing's not particularly great or anything. So a lot of it is that thing of you see someone and you think they're amazing. Then you learn a little bit. I'm not saying I'm amazing by any means, but you start to learn even just the basics, and you realise, they can't count or keep time.
And it can be quite a sad thing, actually, you know, especially as a male dancing with females. And, you know, it's the same thing for females dancing with males. You have your favourite dancers when you're at a certain level. And then you get to a point and you dance with them and it's not the same. And you realise, actually, the quality of their dancing probably hasn't changed. It's just you are now more aware of where the sort of where the problems are, where the issues are, and so it's not the same experience. So yeah, it's a politics laden scene, but it is also a very, despite all those politics and all those issues, which a lot of that kind of you become acutely aware of when you work in that field. It's a healthy lifestyle. You know, it's a fitness activity fundamentally. And for those who don't know what a salsa night generally is, there are people who got salsa nights, me included, from time to time, and we'll drink a hell of a lot and have a really good time. But then most of the time you go to a salsa night, you might have one, maybe two drinks. And then the rest of the time you're just dancing and you're dripping. And so, you're burning off like 500-600 calories a night.
Yeah.
Just and having fun. It is a really good, for me, the gym is really mind numbing. And that's the one thing I miss about salsa is that physical exercise.
It's great. Yeah. Well, I hate to say something might have changed my life a little bit, but it obviously meant that I met my wife, so I have to say it changed my life. So, I owe a small debt to salsa. I want to play a bit of a game, if that's all right. We'll just go really light-hearted for a second, man, a little bit silly. The game is called This or That. I play it with everyone who comes on the podcast. Or should I say, the game basically involves two situations, A or B. It's a would you rather do this or would you rather do that? It's family friendly, so there's nothing too obscene. I know if me and you were playing this game away from the camera and the audio recording, it might be a bit different. So we're going to keep it PG, man. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. You have to choose one. Here we go. This or that. Philip Charles, would you rather A, travel the world for a year, or B, live in the same country, i.e. the UK, in complete luxury for 1 year?
For 1 year?
1 year.
Yeah, I think I'd rather travel the world for 1 year.
Okay.
I know I'd rather do that.
Okay. Have you got any places on your list that you'd like to go visit?
There's places I'd like to go back to. I'd like to go back to Cuba, the Maldives. I did want to go to Thailand, so I've always wanted to go to Thailand. I quite like the idea of visiting Australia as long as I don't have to see anybody. Australia would be nice if it wasn't for the people. So don't get me wrong, if there's any Australians listening, I don't mean that in a really bad way. Countries where racism is a thing and have racist histories, I'd rather avoid.
Okay.
Holidays or travelling, should be free from that kind of thing. You should be relaxed. There's enough of that here at home.
Definitely. That was a deep answer for that question, man. Yeah. I would go for a simpler one. Michael Jackson or Prince?
Michael Jackson. Yeah, that's an easy one as well.
Favourite song?
Oh man, no, that's not an easy one. Blame It on the Boogie probably is my favourite Michael Jackson song. I also like PYT. I'm not going to start doing a list because it's
too many.
Yeah, there's loads. But Prince, yeah, great. But I never really massively got into Prince, and I don't know why that is. There's maybe 3 songs of his that I really enjoy, and that's it. It doesn't resonate with my sensibilities.
MJ wins.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. 2 options. A, having the traffic lights turn green at every turn wherever you go, or B, never queuing for anything ever again.
The traffic lights turning green. I don't mind occasionally queuing, especially when you've got somebody to talk to in a queue. It's all right, it's quite nice. I remember me and my friend Ruben, we went to a comic convention and we were queuing for about an hour, but it was cool. There's people in costumes. Me and him were having a good time, taking selfies and that. Red lights do my head in.
Yeah, I think they do everyone's head in.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Spending 1 year in prison or knocking off 1 year of the end of your life?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. I'd probably knock 1 year off the end of my life.
Okay. Next one. Being insane and knowing it, or being insane and believing that you're not?
I think if you're insane and you know it, you're not insane. So that one.
Okay.
By definition, I think is what it is. People who are insane don't know that they're insane.
Cool. Okay. Losing the ability to see or losing the ability to speak?
These are getting harder. Losing the ability to see or losing the ability to speak? I'd probably lose the ability to see. It's not that I like to speak. I do like silence.
Yeah. But
I usually have something to say.
Okay.
And the thought of not being able to say that.
Okay, next one. Simple. Chess or Monopoly?
Monopoly.
Why?
It's more fun, more players. Chess just takes your brain too much. You got to think too much.
Cool. Okay. Knowing the history of everything or being able to talk to animals?
Oh, man. Knowing the history of everything. No, being able to talk to animals.
Final answer?
Yeah.
You want to talk to those animals and...
Yeah, knowing the history of... it's a tough one. Knowing the history of anything, I can see areas where that would serve you well, but it is limited. The reason why I was going to say it'd be good to know the history of anything rather than talking to animals is because then if you talk to animals, you probably won't want to eat them. But then on the flip side, if you could speak to animals, you probably won't want to eat them. And that's actually, there's a positive to that, actually, if you could know that they have feelings and a certain level of intelligence, that would be the kick, I think, that I would need to stop eating them.
So are you going for knowing the history of everything, or are you going for talking to animals?
To the animals.
Talking to animals, cool. Simple one, next one. Netflix or Amazon Prime?
Netflix, all day long. I have both, but Netflix.
Okay. Final one, and then you can rest easy. The ability to know what was behind every closed door, or be able to guess the combination of every safe on the first try. I'll say those again.
No, I get them. I just don't see the benefits of either.
Okay.
Unless you can actually get away with, like, if you can open any safe and walk away with the contents consequence for free, I'm not inclined to steal. So knowing the combination, unless you've got that, is useless.
It's just two abilities.
No, knowing what's behind each door then.
Okay, knowing what's behind each closed door. Cool. Fantastic. That was that entertaining game. I'm sure we'll think of a slightly more mature version when we leave this podcast. Philip, we're going to wrap up things there. It's been really nice to talk to you. If people want to find out more about yourself, the alternative provision, are there any website links you can share?
We do have a website, but it's kind of geared towards young people. Well, not young people, but teachers really who would send pupils. But that's www.pipelineproductions.co.uk. That's probably the best place to visit, really.
Great stuff. That's great. Well, I really do appreciate you being on. We've had quite a short conversation. I think me and you could talk for hours.
Sometimes do.
We sometimes do. It'd be great to have you back on the podcast again in the future. We could talk more about what's going on at PiPeLine. We could talk more about salsa. We could talk more about, I dare say, politics, but that's like a podcast in itself, isn't it? Yeah. But thank you so much for being on. Take care, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your year, and we look forward to having you back on the So This Works podcast. Thank you.
Cheers.
Well, you've made it this far, you've stuck it out to the very end, so thank you for watching this episode of So This Works. If you've enjoyed this video, please like it, please leave a comment, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, please tell a friend about it, please share this video, and also hit that notification bell so that you're notified as soon as a new video has been released. If you'd like more information about this podcast, please check out the website sothisworks.co.uk. I hope that you will join me for a future episode, and until next time, take care of yourselves.